And star and producer Timothée Chalamet. Crowd is so excited. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this.
How are you both feeling? Edward, you just watched a little bit of the film.
Yeah, I love it.
Amazing. So the audience just got to see both of your faces here on this big old Egyptian screen. So let's
Best
start.
screen in LA, by the way.
Yeah. Love the Egyptian. Yeah, the screen is huge. They got to see both of you just now. And let's start at the beginning of this film. There's so much to dive into with it. But for both of you, what was kind of your personal connection to this story and drew you into Bob Dylan, the music, this time in American culture? Timothée, if you want to go first.
Yeah, I feel, well, first of all, thanks everyone for being here. What a tremendous pleasure to get to do this in an iconic theater like this. Thank you, Edward, for coming. I can't believe I dragged you out of Malibu, so thank you for being here. And I became a Bob Dylan obsessive over the last 6 years, and even in kissing the film goodbye this past year, I go back to it often. And the Dylan experience, not only getting to play him, but to try to understand this man, this great figure who still occupies all our imaginations today, was sort of a workbook on how to conduct my career from that point forward and how I wanted to live my life. And Edward was my partner in bringing the story to life in the conventional way we all saw tonight, but even since the movie's come out, we still exchange, stories and points of inspiration about Dylan and the whole movement that's captured in this film in the 1960s.
Amazing. And Edward, how about you?
Yeah, I get very moved whenever the scene comes where he plays the song for Woody in the hospital, because when I first moved to New York, that record and that song and all those places were so mythological to me. It was a huge part of it was a big part of the myth of moving to New York. For me, there were actors too, but Dylan in New York and that record and that song in particular, of a young man journeying on the inspiration of the ones who came before him, it still gets me, because I think if you're in our trade, there's some version of that in all of us. There's the people who came before you, and you want to walk in their footsteps, and you want to haunt the spaces that they occupied in real and figurative ways. And I think, and I couldn't agree. I mean, I watch Scorsese's great documentary about Dylan maybe once every 2 years, because I agree with Timothée. It's a guidebook. It's a guidebook for the conduct of an artistic life, and a discipline, and an ethic of sticking to your own line, which is very much what I love about this film. And I love the way that the film ends, that he's propelling himself forward into further adventures. And neither of us has ever met Bob, right? You haven't met him since, right? And I had a number of chances to meet him because I'm friends with Bruce Springsteen, and I'd been in the room with Bruce and Bob.
Nice.
And Bruce
Bruce
had
name drop.
No, Bruce had said to me a number of times, "Do you want to meet Bob?" And I always said no, because I think he's the last wizard, the last mystic in this social media world and in infinite connectivity and availability. He remains, for me, he's a mystical figure, and I don't want him. I don't want to bring him down to earth. In many ways.
Totally, I agree. That's amazing, and that brings me to my next question here that I have for you, Timothée. You've played real people both on screen and on stage as well, but Dylan is this huge character, almost mythological in a sense, and so what was it like taking that task up and making him human? Because I think you really succeeded in that here, and we get to see him as someone who's going through life as we are, relating to it as artists. So what was that like?
Well, I felt super daunted at first, particularly when I was very much on the outside of it, not really knowing much of his work or his. I knew his cultural reputation because it's one of these names you just hear of growing up, but I felt daunted by it. At some point, I really internalized, I feel like, the character, and I feel this was the first project in my life where I felt like I became an authority on what I was working on. I feel like that confidence carried through into putting the film out. That confidence carried into working on Marty Supreme with Josh, putting that movie out. That confidence carried through to working with Denis on Doom Part 3. It was not only an authorship in the experience of playing Bob, it was trying to understand how he himself would have approached all his work in his entire career. I feel like in the years since, that authority has evaporated, and he's become a wizard to me once more. I feel like this guy whose worldview I try to inhabit every day, and taking a couple of steps back and revisiting his music now, I go, wow, I thought I cracked it, but maybe I didn't get any of it, not in the performance or any of it, but just the great mythological artistic figure he represents,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you did an amazing job. But for both of you, how was just the rehearsal process of getting into this as well? There's the live performances and the live singing as you were shooting musically, and then of course working with such an iconic director, James Mangold. So what was that like?
I loved it. I'll say this really quickly, Edward. What I'm so proud of this movie, about 2 years out from shooting it now, a year out from putting it out, is doing a music biopic is a tremendously hard genre to make a movie. And now, ever since the Walk Hard was made, it makes it really hard to feel like what you're working on is fresh, is the best way I could put it. And I just feel like Edward and Elle and Monica and myself, we went really hard. There's no other way to express it. The costume test we all did, I don't know if you remember this, we were all so awkward around each other, like, sussing each other out, but it was nothing about this felt like we were taking it for granted. Nothing felt like, oh, we're, putting on, costumes the way people used to dress. I feel like we really, so anyway, to be specific to your question about rehearsal process, I feel like we were all like animals, like sussing each other out, and especially with Edward, because I'll just be specific to this and then I'll shut up, but I had massive respect for Edward, and I was also daunted. When you speak about authority and authorship in acting and in performance, he embodies it, He's not entirely his character in Birdman, which is one of my favorite films ever. He's not entirely that character, but there are bits of that character that are in Edwards. So I felt actually quite daunted because that sense of authority, I don't know why I keep using that word, I was very protective over it. I didn't want anyone. I won't say what the note is, but Edward came to me maybe 3 weeks from finishing. He had one live note, and I was like, motherfucker, why did you just put that in my ear? But then I went home and I thought about it. I was like, that's actually a great thought, I don't know if you remember what I'm talking about. Don't say it. Don't say it.
No, I was telling. All I ever told you to do was stick to your own line. To do what you were doing. Some other people were telling you, I think. Are we talking about?
You had a very, very specific physical. Very.
Oh
specific.
yes, I did. I do. With regard to the mic.
It was like a mic thing. It was. Let's not get too much into it.
Yes. No.
I'm curious.
People watch it back and go, "That was all Edward."
But one thing we were. I will say we were very aligned on. I was very, very. From the minute we did the hospital scene, I thought Timothée should not play to playback. I thought he should play it live, because he sounded. It was. We had done the pre-records, a bit ahead, and it's just impossible to. It's impossible to really capture.
Totally.
What happens, and I think what Timothée said is true. There's an inevitability making a film. It's an enormous amount of technical. There's just a technical forest all around you, and an enormous number of people who have a narrow, specific focus of their own. Whether it's your costume and they just want to do that to you right before you go out, or they want to do that, or someone's in charge of the music, and they are worried about cutting that music later and everything, and this huge onslaught of distraction can come at you, in service of these very important technical realities, and sometimes you just have to throw your hands up and create some space, and I think that I felt very early on that Timothy's live all of our singing live was better than anything we had done in the booth. And yet there was a pressure to do takes to the playback. And I think one thing I said to you was, stop assenting to that. You know, and I think, I mean, I think Timothy's singing is so fantastic in it. It's so hard to get close to Dylan's bizarre, strange, poetic voice. But I agree. I also remember, and Timothy brought a lot of leadership in this. You said authority. I don't remember when it was discussed, but there was a point at which it was just like, we can't have anybody come on this set. We can't have people come, and you were very firm about that this has to be a sacrosanct. We can't kind of glibly put these cloaks on and hang them up at the end of the day. It just won't work if you're just pretending to be these people. Mm-hmm. And it is wild how, I've done this, decades now, and you've done it a long time too. It's amazing how much a single pair of eyes on you that aren't in the team, that aren't in the thing, can throw you into a state of self-consciousness about what you're doing, and create the feeling of play acting or insecure. It's wild how much you need to not have anything that looks like an unfamiliar eye on you, and while doing something like this.
That makes a lot of sense here, in just looking from the outside in, of this is a period piece, you are playing these real people, and it speaks to the trust that you all kind of built within yourselves too, of really being in this and taking it very seriously. So what did Bob Dylan and this film teach you both new as artists, this whole experience?
Well, I feel like this was foundational in that regard. You know, it's the foundation I'm working off of now. I was thinking about that on the drive here. If I had done this film at 24, 25 years old when I got approached with it, I wouldn't have had the metaphysical, no matter how pretentious that word is, experience I had with the movie. And to me, it's a question of authority and authorship, but also of instincts. And I feel like, just using the recording process as a metaphor, Nick Baxter is a wonderful music producer. He did all the music on this. I was very receptive to his notes. You know, as artists, as actors, as people in life, you're constantly crowdsourcing how you're doing, you know? And sometimes your instincts can be mid, sometimes your instincts can be bad, but sometimes your instincts can be phenomenal. And that's just the truth. And I feel like that was the biggest learning curve for me on this. And I'm not trying to sound self-appraising or whatever, but it was really at some point to go, when we did that scene in the hospital, I went, man, I feel like I'm really locked in here in a weird way. It's weird to talk about financial terms for a movie where you got paid and stuff like that, but that was not at all why I did this, you know? And I felt some strength even from that perspective of working on it. I felt it while I was working on it. I thought, okay, I'm not doing this for any other reason than to get something out of it. And so if I learned anything, it's what I said before. It's, to this day, seeing how Bob connected his career, his life, his artistry, being inspired by it, but then on a more foundational level, like instincts, trusting your instincts, even to go into Marty Supreme, or even on A Complete Unknown, you know, with James Mangold, Edward Norton, Elle Fanning, Monica Barbaro, they all have, everyone's bringing, agenda's not the right word, everyone's bringing their spirit. Let's say Marty, Josh, and Ronnie, they have fierce points of view, and you know, I just turned 30. It takes something to, you go, no, this is how I think, you know, not in a confrontational. I just did it confrontationally. I don't know why, but yeah, you know. Anyway, I'm rambling.
Try that again.
Yeah, exactly. I'm rambling.
Love that. And Edward, you've worked with as you said, you've been doing this for decades. You've worked with so many different actors. What did you kind of recognize in Timothy as when you met him and saw the way he worked?
We've known each other a little bit prior to doing it, but I really appreciated his ferocity, all the things he's describing. I think it is, I have an almost gut affinity for you know, or a sense of empathy or solidarity. Solidarity is the right word. Taking on real people, and someone as iconic as Dylan is going to require a flex and an assertiveness of the space you need, the tonality that you want in the working environment, and sometimes when you're doing that, you can almost be made to feel that, I don't know, you're being demanding on other people who are in a process. They may do another film next year. You know, they do three films that year, and I felt a strong alliance. I think we felt a strong alliance that it was fair and right to hold the, you know, set the rules of engagement that we needed. And I will say it was a great bunch of people. People were really supportive. It wasn't. I didn't feel like we were at odds with the process that's around us. But I think for me the thing. I mean, I will say that the first time Jim or maybe even Timothée brought it up to me, the whole thing, you know, there's this part of me that thought this is just full stop a terrible idea. You know, one should not try to approach these people. Like, one should not try to approach any of these people, Pete or Joan or Bob, certainly Bob. And you do have to get to this, you do have to find a reason. I think Timothée articulated some of the things for him, like a depth of experience. For me, I think what it was, and Jim helped me with this a lot, I must say, was that I realized that Jim wasn't making a biopic per se. He wasn't trying to assess Bob Dylan's life. He was looking at a period in time, a moment in time, when there were collisions taking place between a group of people and the culture around them that reverberated in a big way. And this was artists affecting the times that they were living in. They were absorbing what was going on around them. They were unhappy about, you know, the violence, the discrimination, the threat of war, all of it, and they spoke about it loudly in their work, and they affected the generation around them. And, you know, Pete Seeger wrote "We Shall Overcome." Martin Luther King credited Pete Seeger with "We Shall Overcome" being given to the movement. It was a spiritual, but he wrote those the modern lyrics to it. And Bob Dylan, obviously, the songs he gave the anti-war movement and gave the civil rights movement, it reverberated. And I found myself thinking, you know, we may, and many people may have a full appreciation and almost obsession with Dylan, but there are many, many, many people who have lost a sense of connection, or young people who haven't yet engaged with how important those artists were and how boldly they were interacting with the time they were in. And I thought to myself, revisiting artists who were engaged in that way, especially right now, is worth it. There's a worthiness to the bravura kind of risk of trying to, you know, represent these people if we can remind people what it looks like when artists are actually speaking to the times. And I think, you know, tomorrow we're gonna see Bad Bunny at the Super Bowl, and I've been thinking about him a lot. Like, he's been, the way he speaks and the way he is conducting himself at a very high frequency in terms of what his work represents and what it stands for and what he's trying to say through it, I find it very refreshing and exhilarating, because it's a direct line of connection to what these people did. And we need more of that, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was great. Absolutely. Thank you for that. And just speaking to the musical biopic, and what you said about how hard of a genre it is, I think you all of you, it really feels like such an ensemble piece, especially as someone who wasn't too familiar with Bob Dylan and this time period in terms of the nitty-gritty details, and then got to get more absorbed in it and look into the history. I just think you all did a wonderful job of capturing that nature, that freedom, and this pushback. So it's amazing. But Edward, I have another question for you. Have you seen Marty Supreme?
Of course.
Amazing. And what questions, when you saw it, did you have for Timothée in terms of as an actor and then also as a filmmaker yourself?
I love Timothée's work. I love ping pong. As my family who's here can attest, I love ping pong, table tennis. But
Yes, he's really good.
when I had a coach in Beijing for a period, when I was working there.
Did you talk to him about this?
He texted me this. I was
Yeah.
like,
He said something like, "What, you want my game?" And I said, "You can't handle my game, Jack." Like,
he's lived many lives.
yeah.
I love it.
I love ping pong, and I love Josh Safdie's films. I think Uncut Gems is like a modern masterpiece. I love Hard Times. I think, sorry, Good Time, not Hard Time, Good Time. He there's a kinetic energy in his films that is so, they are so propulsive.
Yes.
And if you work in film, it's so hard to create that propulsive drive. And I love the way that you guys sustained it. You know, it's like I almost feel like Marty Supreme is like, it's about someone with aspiration, but the whole film feels athletic to me. It just goes and goes and goes, and reminded me in some ways of like my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson, like Boogie Nights or something. It just went, but it looks like $1 million, and cast is so great. I really loved it.
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I have questions. Oh, were you saying what are my questions?
What is your question?
Yeah, I got a lot of questions. I mean, I know you were not hitting that ping pong ball like that, but I won't pull the curtain back on you. I have a question for you. I've always heard about Josh. I think Josh, we're both New Yorkers, and Josh is a New Yorker, and there's a way of every film I've ever directed, I directed in New York. New York can crush you, or it can really give you wings in a way. And Josh, to me, is like a quintessential New York filmmaker in the sense that he just, like, who casts better faces? He's got the best faces in modern cinema. But that's a big film. Like, that's a big film, and it has beautiful production design. And I know Darius Kanji is not the fastest he's not the fastest DP in the world. How did Josh? It was almost like he took this step up into period and into, this incredible mise en scène and all this stuff. How do you think he sustained what I'd call that guerrilla energy? Do you feel like he was challenged in keeping his kind of guerrilla, fast-moving pacing, despite all of the fantastic kind of?
No, I mean, yes and no. I feel like he's got a great team around him that protected his sensibility. He didn't have a video village. He was never in a chair. He was always moving with the monitor. And I think he would be suspicious of things that felt like they were, like even the faces you're referencing, every single face he went over, every background artist, he reviewed their face well in advance, and it was a lot. It was like something like 600 or 700 people ultimately. So his fingerprints
How
were all
many
over.
days did you shoot?
Like 45 or 47.
Oh, it was fast.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But he's also relentless and he's hungry. He's like the insurgent New York filmmaker. So I feel like no part of him was relaxed through the process. The movie has an anxious feel, and he lives in that anxious middle ground in life, not in a debilitating way. He's comfortable in that space.
I loved your skin. I thought that was such a
Yes.
good choice. And it's, by the way, that can be very distracting if you get that wrong. But actually, Gwyneth told me that she came up to you and quietly started suggesting like Goop products and micro needling that she didn't realize that it was. Is that true?
She didn't say it to me, but I saw her whispering into Josh, and then Josh came over and said she thought your skin was all. It wasn't. So,
It looked
Goop has
fantastic.
something for that.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Timothy, as we're reflecting on your body of work and thinking about these two films in particular that we're talking about, what through lines do you think is there about the characters and stories that you're kind of drawn to?
I don't know if there's a through line. I know no Marty Supreme exists without a complete unknown, because I feel like they bled into each other. And I shot them maybe 5-6 months apart, and I stayed in the same apartment in New York. And I don't know. I don't know if there's a through line, but this a complete unknown working on it for 6 years. The music of Bob Dylan. It was sort of like going to school or something. It was like a very, very, very high level going to school as far as getting to work on a movie about it afterwards. And at risk of repeating myself, it's just a total guiding light in my life and career now. And even as Edward was saying about the way the artists were combustible then, and I don't know, the way I even frame things pop culturally now. And you know, I love what you said about the Super Bowl tomorrow, the way like that Grammy speech tees up what I think will be a very powerful Super Bowl tomorrow, Super Bowl halftime show. You know, it sounds professorial to compare it to the 60s or whatever, but I can't help but think about moments past where, you know, artists have gone out on a limb to risk something, you know, to help move it forward, to help move us all forward, you know.
Absolutely. Yes. This is adding all new context for this performance for everyone in this room tomorrow. It's going to be really great. So for a fun closing question here, before we wrap, so Bob Dylan is this artist that was and is always evolving. As actors and artists yourself, what are you excited about the road ahead? Like, what still excites you about the work and your craft, and especially because you both have done so many different types of roles?
Well, I'll try to keep this brief, but I feel like continuing to push the edge is why I'm really grateful Edward's here with me right now, took time out of his day to be with all of us, but equally just the experience working with him. As an actor, you risk looking foolish. That's about all you risk. And it's harder in a world of AI, in a world of the crazy world we live in, to feel like what you're doing is sacred, because it can feel so silly, it can feel foolish. And Edward is someone in his work, in Birdman, in Rounders, and everything I grew up on, in Fight Club, obviously, you know, where I was deeply reverential towards the work. And then in working with him, I went, man, this guy has his own back. He has the back of his work. It's very inspiring to me, you know, and yeah. I want to continue chasing those experiences, not out of self-aggrandizement, but to, you know, we're looking at this. This has probably existed forever. We want to keep this tradition alive and well and vibrant, not because we're, you know, begging people to come to the theater, but because they got reason to come, you know, and because the stuff's actually good. So that's my dream.
Absolutely. Excites you.
And I love the diversity of the stuff you've been working on. I love how different Marty Supreme is from this film, and I love, you know, but I loved you in Bones and All. I think that's a
one of my favorites.
I did. I think that's a very, 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 very strange. Strange in the best sense. That is a film operating in a frequency, and you're operating in a frequency that's really, really different. Look, you know, like making films, acting, any kind of art, it's not a competitive sport. You know, it's not, and there's a lot that tries to turn it into that, and we should all psychologically resist that with every inch of ourselves, because it's the matrix of these things that are sort of this, you know, the idea of awards, the idea of box office, all of it. These are things that serve themselves, and they kind of want us to serve them as well. But the work can't have anything added or subtracted to it by any of that. And I think that if you have to allow yourself, I'm older than Timothy, but it ebbs and flows. Your inspiration ebbs and flows, and it changes. Like, and I think that to me, the real lesson of Bob Dylan, like truly, and I know we sound almost like acolytes or something, but the idea of someone who moved down a path of his own on the basis of honoring the ebbs and flows of his own interests is you can't overstate how difficult it can be when the world, when culture essentially wants, just what this film is talking about, wants you to stay in, not even in a lane, but just maybe repeating something that you've done. And the most interesting experience is just what Timmy was talking about, like when you feel out on a limb, when you feel uncertain because you're in unfamiliar territory, when you're listening to an impulse that's new and strange, you're feeling drawn towards something. Like I love David Bowie's line that if you haven't gone out to where your feet don't touch the bottom anymore, then you're not in the right place, you know. And I think myself, the actor's brain is egotistical, it's narcissistic, it's fundamentally things, and in many ways you've got to allow yourself time to pause. Like you've got to allow yourself reassessment at many junctures and say, not only why am I doing this, but what draws me into it? What gives me the inspiration to go deep into this fundamentally ridiculous job of dressing up and pretending to be other people? And I think listening to yourself and allowing space and not being afraid of ebb tides, like Timmy's in the middle of a flood tide right now.
If you're a member of the Screen Actors Guild, make sure to, no, I'm kidding. Just wanted to cut right into everything you were saying.
But I think for myself, I feel fortunate every day that I get to mix it up on things such as we did, and I have no idea what the balances of it will be in the future, or even what I'm really looking for. But I think if you stay available and stay open, it emerges. It emerges and reveals itself to you.
Amazing. I mean, it's just been, yes, thank you. It's really amazing to kick off this series with the two of you. Congratulations, Timmy. We look forward to having you at more of these screenings. Thank you for coming out. Edward, you both are like so filled with just a love for the craft and on the same frequency. So thank you both for being here. Thank you all for coming out. And have a good night, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you.